This video can be the equivalent of your pre-workout for your fantasy football drafts. 10 tips, 10 steps that I take personally in every fantasy football draft I'm in. There's not a single doubt in my mind that after watching this video, you will be the most prepared person in your fantasy league during this year's draft. All right, the first step or tip is you need in your fantasy drafts, you just have to understand and fully comprehend your starting lineup. The number one thing I do when I join any fantasy football league is I look at the starting lineup. How big is the lineup? And the reason you need to know that is because you need to know what positions you are required to start each and every week. So let's talk about some of the standard ones, like start seven. Start seven leagues are pretty standard on like ESPN, Yahoo, CBS, the NFL app. You're starting 7 players, not including kickers and defenses. So it's a single flex league. So in this league, in this format, which a lot of you guys will play in, the onesies, which are the quarterback and tight ends, because you start them one time, the onesie positions account for about almost 29% of your weekly points. You can see at the top end of that little graph there, tight ends and quarterbacks. That's a really decent chunk. I mean, those guys in your league who end up with the elite onesies have a big advantage over other people in their league. So like logistically, the Josh Allens, the Lamar Jacksons, the Brock Bowers, the Trey McBrides, they will be more important to me in a start 7 lineup than like a start 10, for example, right? How about a start 8? Oh, well, it's the same thing, but you add another flex spot, all right? In this starting lineup, the onesies account for about 25% of your weekly points. Still important, but not as crucial as a start 7, right? Then you go to a start 9. You guys get the idea. In a start 9, they account for 22%, those onesies. Then you get to a start 10, goes to 20%. So these onesies contribute less and less to your weekly fantasy points the bigger your starting lineup is, so you prioritize them less the bigger your starting lineup is, right? So like logically in the start 10, where these onesies don't account for a lot of your starting lineup points, you would be looking for this year's Brock Bowers, the guy that you can draft late that hits. This year's Baker Mayfield, the guy that you draft late and that hits. This year's Jaden Daniels. Those guys are the keys to having those like league winning rosters. However, some of you are also out there in start 3 wide receiver leagues. So let's look at like a start 8 single flex 3 wide receiver format. So you have to start 3 wide receivers. In this format, the wide receivers become uber important to your lineup success because they contribute to almost 44% of your weekly points. And then super flex leagues, for example, quarterbacks contribute to a very high percentage of your weekly points, and they score a lot of points more than any other position. So again, wrapping this first point up, you need to know your lineup, and once you do, it should impact the way you draft. All right, number 2. You need to know your league scoring, and it should influence the way you draft. So what do I mean by that? You've got non-PPR, where you don't get any points per reception, half PPR, where you get half a point per reception, and full PPR. So for example, in full PPR leagues, wide receivers are typically kings, all right? But in non-PPR leagues, running backs are by far the king of non-PPR formats. Like, let's look at the math, okay? We've taken the average point per game for the top 12 running backs and wide receivers in the last 2 years. In PPR leagues, wide receivers have an advantage of 0.2. In non-PPR leagues, running backs have an advantage of 2.7 points PPR. That's the advantage that the running backs have in no PPR leagues. You've got to have a solid running back room in that format. Other things that you could consider in scoring, how many points do your quarterbacks get for passing touchdowns? Are you in a 4-point passing touchdown league or a 6-point passing touchdown league? Because in 4-point touchdown leagues, the rushing quarterbacks are goated because they still get rushing touchdowns, which are worth 6 points. Your Lamar Jacksons, your Jalen Hurts with a tush push, your Josh Allen, Jaden Daniels, Justin Fields, these guys are clutch in your 4-point passing touchdown leagues. But in your 6-point passing touchdown leagues, the guys that are on pass-heavy offenses that are throwing a bunch of touchdowns with great receiver cores, your Baker Mayfields, your Joe Burrows, those guys are just as good, if not better. I mean, for example, Baker Mayfield and Joe Burrow last year scored more points per game than Josh Allen in 6-point passing touchdowns formats. I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. Other scoring that you need to think about, does your league have a tight end premium? The vast majority, 95% of people watching this, you will not have a tight end premium, but that basically gives tight ends more points per reception than any other position. So when you have this knowledge about your scoring format and your starting lineup now, we've added these 2, it gives you immense confidence heading into your draft, right? All right, number 3. And I would consider these first 3 the big 3, if you will. But number 3, your league size is crucial to drafting well, specifically referring to the amount of people you are in a fantasy league with. The most common size are 8-team leagues, 10 team, 12 team, or 14 team leagues. The most common really are 10 and 12 team leagues. But the thing is, you would draft completely differently in an 8-team league compared to a 14-team league. So like, for example, in an 8-team league, if you're in a start 7 lineup, 8-team league, you can fill your starting lineup in the first 56 picks. It's incredibly easy to put together a starting lineup. I would go so incredibly hard after the elite onesies. I'm getting an elite quarterback. I'm getting an elite tight end in an 8-team start 7 because it's incredibly easy to fill out the rest of my lineup because I'm not drafting with a lot of people and it's just easy to find those guys later on, right? But if you switch that and think about a 14-team league, in a start 7 format, the earliest you can fill your lineup is pick 98. I mean, almost double the amount of picks compared to, the 8-man league that we looked at there. So it's much more difficult to prioritize those early quarterbacks and tight ends because it's so hard to put together a starting lineup, right? The bigger your league, the more difficult it is to justify those onesies. If you're in a 10-team, by the way, in a start 7, the earliest you can fill your starting lineup is pick 70, and then you can actually pause the screen and have a look at the math for whatever your starting lineup is. For a 12-team, the earliest you can fill in a start 7 is pick 84. Again, then you look at a start 8, it's 96 picks, start 9 is 108, and start 10 is 120. You get it. You can pause the screen, you can save this, you can screenshot it. But a good rule of thumb, this is what you need to take away. The smaller your starting lineup and the smaller your league size, the more you should prioritize onesies, aka quarterback and tight ends. You want the elite guys. The bigger your starting lineup and the bigger your league size, the more likely you are to go late round quarterback and tight ends because you want to build out a more complete roster. Okay, so with those first big 3, and we've got 8 more tips to talk about, let's combine the first 3, just the first 3, and let's have a look at an example, okay? So here's a mock draft for an 8-team start 7 lineup, all right? I picked at the 4 spot. It is incredibly easy to fill out your starting lineup. So in this small league size, small starting lineup, start 7, we went ahead and prioritized elite onesies. So we grabbed our Josh Allens in the 3rd round. We grabbed our George Kittles in the 5th round, which that might seem late for you guys, but it's an 8-team league. Keep that in mind, right? So now we have a starting lineup. If we look at our roster here of Josh Allen, CMC, Taylor, Lamb, Metcalf, Kittle, Walker, and we still have so many players on our bench that we can flex because it's just a start 7. Again, this is why I said the smaller your league, the smaller your league size, the smaller your starting lineup, the more you prioritize the onesie positions. But let's go ahead and look at a 12-team start 10. So in a start 10, we have 4 flex spots. I drafted here at the 9 spot, you can see. And in this format, I did not prioritize quarterback or tight end at any point of my draft, okay? Because I have so much obligation in my flex spot for wide receivers and running backs. That's what I prioritized in my draft. So you can see we went Dak Prescott in the 12th, then Strange and Taylor late in the 13th and 14th round. But we had to do that because look at how many players I have to roster. You look at my flex spots, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. We're flexing Pearsall, Odunze, Harvey, T-Mac. So it's okay that we have weaker quarterbacks and tight ends in this format because they contribute to less of the overall roster anyway in a start 10 on a weekly basis. But also it's more difficult, to draft those elite guys because you're missing out on such important pieces of your roster, okay? All right, 4th tip, you need to learn how to read a draft board. You have to. You just have to know how to read a draft board, guys. There's no reason that you shouldn't be able to, and we're going to learn together. So, for example, let's say you're drafting on the edges. You're drafting at the 9 spot in a 12-team league, and you really want a tight end. If the team on the edges that are about to draft after you also have a huge tight end need, then you probably need to prioritize that tight end right now. So here's an example over on the Flock Fantasy site. We did a mock draft over here. And the great thing about the Flock site is you can use bots from people with other creators' rankings. It's a great mock draft tool. But you can see here in the 9th round, you see that David Njoku. There was a little run of tight ends here in the 9th round, from Mark Andrews to Tyler Warren, Colson Loveland. And then I did not have a tight end heading into the 9th round. And Njoku was the last tight end in a tier that I really liked, and I had to read the board. So here's what I mean by read the board. When I look at Team 10, did they have a tight end? Yes, they had one at George Kittle at the 403. But how about Team 11? No, they did not have a tight end yet. How about Team 12? No, they did not have a tight end yet. So I knew that both of those players who were going to have 2 picks, there's a chance out of the next 4 picks that David Njoku is selected. So we had to take David Njoku there and wait on our wide receiver that we liked in Jaden Higgins. You can read all over the board. If you're at the 4 spot and the draft is coming back around to you and the guys on the left side of the board don't have a quarterback, but there's a quarterback you love or a wide receiver that you love or any position, you need to read the board and see what other people are thinking. Put yourself in their shoes. That gives you an edge when you're able to, really read the board well. All right, let's go to tip number 5. You need to know that the queue is your best friend. I don't care what fantasy site you're playing on. They're going to have a draft queue. And if they don't play on that fantasy site. Your queue is your best friend, all right? So here's a recent mock I was doing with our mock draft tool on the Flock Fantasy site. I was deciding where to go with my 2nd round pick. And what I decided to do is let me just fill up a queue, okay? And let me see what players I'm going to be comfortable with my next pick, because that helps me make this pick, right? And I was happy with all these players falling to me in the 3rd round. That gave me the confidence to draft JT. But more importantly, your queue, think about it. In a live draft, you can't pause the draft. It's just constantly going. People are making picks. When you have a queue formed up that you have a bunch of players that you're happy to draft when your pick is available, you don't panic pick. The worst thing you can do in a fantasy football draft is just panic pick. You're like, oh no, what do I do? I had one guy in mind and he's gone. You have to have the best players available in your mind, queued up, ready to go, and it helps you kind of make that decision easier when the time is ticking. I mean, it just helps the board fall to you in a natural way. And by the way, I can't express how great it is to mock draft on the Flock Fantasy site. It is by far the best mock draft system you can get out there. You can actually mock for free when you create a free account with the promo code LAND. Use a promo code LAND, create a free account on the Flock site, flockfantasy.com/land, and start ripping off some drafts. You can even join me on my live streams. Check out our channel. We're live streaming all the time, and you can join me in a mock draft. And that pretty much naturally takes me to my 6th tip, which is get plenty of mock draft practice in. Plan for the ideal strategy, but also plan for the worst case scenario. If you can't fulfill your strategy, if the guy that you don't want is there, how are you going to react? Get as many mock drafts in so you're comfortable no matter what happens. And by the way, on the Flock site, you can join public drafts with other members of the community. They're constantly popping off. Or you can create your own draft and draft against the creator rankings. Like you can put like the land bot in there, the FSC, domain, Flock bots, Mason's rankings. You draft against literally my rankings. You can do that on your own. All right, the 7th tip here is don't draft off of ADP, but rather use it to your advantage. So for example, I know I keep referencing the Flock site. It's an incredible resource, but you can look at expert consensus rankings over there. You can look at my personal rankings and my draft guide when you're drafting in your own leagues. And what you want to do is think through what players you're going to have to force because of ADP and what players that are going to fall to you. That strategically allows you to draft. But also you want to be drafting with tier-based rankings, all right? This allows you to know exactly how I would draft your team via my tier-based draft rankings over with my draft guide on the Flock site. Look, I know you guys are being sold a lot of things in pretty much every video that you're watching nowadays, but I'm saying this genuinely from the bottom of my heart. The 2025 season pass to the Flock site is objectively the best deal the fantasy industry has ever seen. Like genuinely, every single resource we've discussed today is available with the season pass, which by the way is only $34 when you use the promo code LAND, L-A-N-D at sign up. That's about $1.60 for every week to the end of the season. And by the way, you get the following when you become a season pass member: season-long access to my rankings, including in-season and rest of season rankings. You get all the premium tools on the Flock site, right? The trade calculator, the trade finder, the My Teams analyzer. You get all of those tools. You get access to 4 vouchers where you can ask me questions on my live streams. I'll be answering your fantasy questions. You get access to my draft guide, as well as all the draft guides from the other creators on the site, and the ability to enter Land Live community leagues where we are drafting together every week. We're raffling off spots for you to be a part of a league that matters with our community. So look, even if you don't like me, find some creator, their rankings that are tier-based rankings that you trust. The great thing about the Flock site is they have expert consensus. So if you trust Mason or someone else more than me, you can actually look at consensus, but find someone's rankings that you do trust. Don't draft just based off of ADP. All right, the 8th tip is do not ever draft to fill a need. You don't want to be doing that. Always take the best player available. For example, all right, let's just hypothetically think of an example here. You're in round 5 of your fantasy draft, and you just feel like you desperately need a tight end and a quarterback. A bunch of guys have drafted them in your league. You know, you just feel like you have to grab it, right? But the best player available, think about it. If the best player available at quarterback is Kyler Murray, the best player available at tight end is Mark Andrews. But at wide receiver, you've got Jameson Williams available. At running back, you have RJ Harvey available. If you go the quarterback or the tight end position, you are forcing it because of a need. You're not getting the most value out of that pick. I mean, keep in mind, the team that you draft is not the team that you're going to end up with when you're a champion at the end of the year. You can trade for need later on if you want to. You can find answers on the waiver wire. The draft is not the only answer to building a championship team, so stop treating it like it is, all right? Let's be realistic here, all right? I mean, you don't draft Mark Andrews just because you think you need a tight end and everyone else has one. Go with the best player available. Go with the guy that can break out, that you can trade for an elite onesie anyway, right? Okay, the 9th tip here, let's talk about how to handle the onesies. Again, onesies being quarterback and tight end, because in your one quarterback formats, you start these guys once in your lineup. So I have a very general rule of thumb that I follow, and it just logically makes sense. So let's talk about this. If you take a onesie early, don't invest again. Just don't. If you go early quarterback, if you go early tight end, you should not be going tight end in round 3, and then in round 6, you're like, let me grab another tight end. Or quarterback in round 3, and in round 7, let me grab another quarterback. No, don't be stupid, all right? Why do I say that? Well, if you're taking a onesie early, you are losing the ability to add an impact running back or a wide receiver. You have got to use your later picks to try and swing on upside running backs, wide receivers in that case, right? I mean, you got to give yourself a chance to make up for that early pick that you used on a onesie. Okay, if you don't take a onesie early, you don't go quarterback and tight end early, you're trying to go late round, do not be afraid in that position to draft multiple late round onesies. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Well, if you haven't gone a onesie early, then you've probably built a really solid core of wide receivers and running backs. So that gives you the ability to take those late round swings on the onesies to see what's possible. So take Tyler Warren and Colson Loveland in round 10 and 11. Take Justin Fields and JJ McCarthy. You know, you've built a foundation to do that type of outcome for your draft. Okay, does that make sense? I think that makes sense. All right, tip number 10, wait until the last pick for your defense or your kicker, both of them, all right? The last 2 picks of your draft, if you play in leagues with defenses and kickers, should be defense and kicker. Every single year, we make the same mistake where we think, I know what's going to happen with this kicker. I know what's going to happen with this defense. It is by far the most streamable positions in fantasy point blank period. I mean, for example, the Ravens right now are the consensus 3rd best defense in consensus rankings on Fantasy Pros, right? In week 1, the Ravens play the Buffalo Bills. You're going to draft the Ravens early in your draft, and then are you going to start them versus Buffalo? Probably not. I mean, look at the 3 out of the 4 first matchups. They play Buffalo, the Lions, Kansas City. The reality is every week you should be looking at waiver wire options to stream for the defense and the kicker position. If you go these guys too early, you're missing out on late round upside swings at other positions that matter. So just don't be stupid, okay? Don't be stupid. All right, here's an honorable mention tip, the last tip of this the video. How can you practice? Mock drafts are great. But if you want to be put into a real pressure-packed scenario, get into some best ball drafts. Here's my latest best ball draft on the FastDraft app. A lot of these best ball drafts, the buy-in is very reasonable. You can win money off of it, but you're actually practicing that pressure moment where you're making the pick. So here's my latest draft here. Saquon in round 1, Higgins and Adams in rounds 3 and 4. This is on the Rabbit FastDraft app, 15-round, 1 quarterback format, start 8. It used to be a $20 entry. Now it's $10 entry, but it's still the same $50,000 prize pool. Now, this is not going to replace your home league, guys. There's no commitment in season. You love drafting. You can draft here, and there's no commitment beyond this year or beyond that draft. It's automatically managed for you. You just draft, you let it ride, you get some practice for your home league, you get some practice in some real life scenarios. I love drafting. If you love drafting, come draft with me on the FastDraft app. Download it. Use the promo code LAND at sign up. We'll match your deposit up to $50. Then you're going to get my cheat sheet for free, okay? So you'll be ready to go for your home league anyway. And by the way, if you do sign up, DM me on Discord. I'd love to add you to my group chat where we're drafting together on FastDraft. But I appreciate y'all watching the video. Do me a favor, hit that like button to show some love. Subscribe if you like the content, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Nothing but love. Draft with me every night this offseason on the FastDraft app, where there are over $250,000 in prizes waiting to be won. Getting started is easy. Download the FastDraft app, use the promo code LAND at signup to get your deposit match up to $50. That is 10 free drafts on us. And when you finish your first real money contest, I'll send you my 2025 rookie report and season rankings completely free. Check out the link in the pinned comment to start drafting today.